How we doing, everybody? It's Wardy here. It's May 27th, 2025, and we have plenty to get into in our latest Big Mets update segment. But of course, if you guys did not check out this past night's victory in a walk-off fashion for the Amazons by a final score 2-1 there against the Chicago White Sox, please make sure to check out our post-game coverage from this past night. And thank you guys so much for doing exactly that, because today we're going to not only talk about how the Mets have a chance to secure their second straight series victory with a win later on this evening at the time of this video coming out, but we're going to mainly talk about here what is going on the health front of guys in Manaea Siri and Manaea, two key players who have been on the shelf for an extended period of time, and the great news is that both are working their way back to this Mets team. Now the question lies, when will they return, and what will the Mets potentially get in either of the two when they inevitably return this Mets team? Well, Carlos Mendoza had some key words to share with the media this past day that we'll get into, and from there, we're going to talk a lot on the Mauricio front, as Mauricio is officially eligible to be called up by the Mets now this season. Now that is in fact May 27th. When will Ronnie potentially get the call? Is he a better option over guys like Jared Young there batting from the left side of a DH option? And staying on the farm, let's also talk about a man in Brandon Sproat. Brandon Sproat deemed by many as the top pitching prospect for the Mets, or at least certainly one of them between himself, Noel McLean, and Jonathan. How did Sproat fare in his latest outing? And ultimately, could we see him potentially get the call at all this season? And to wrap up the show, we're going to talk more there on what is happening with guys like Luis Torrens and Francisco Alvarez, the battle of the catching duo, who deserves more rightful playing time than the other, and what is Alvarez doing with that swing right now that we like and dislike as Mets fans. Thank you guys so much for smashing like and subscribe on as you first chime in. It's greatly appreciated, and please make sure to let me know all your key thoughts in the comments down below, folks. And as always, shout out to our amazing sponsor that we have here at SeatGeek that has you covered with all of your ticketing needs, folks. SeatGeek that currently has over 70,000 active events to choose from, making them the #1 rated ticketing app in the game today. I'm so grateful to have them here as a season-long sponsor. Thanks to you amazing Mets fans utilizing our promo code that you can check out by clicking that link down below. But before we get there, let's talk about why you guys should utilize SeatGeek over any other ticketing app in the game. And as someone who's utilized them well before they became an official sponsor on the platform, I can tell you that it comes down to one thing in particular, and that is what you guys will see beside me, and that is their grading scale. You not only have a scale of 1 to 10, but it goes from red to green. And I like pretty colors. So if you tell me right away that, okay, green means good, red means bad, it's easy for your guy Wardy to follow, similar to Baseball Savant there with the blue and the red percentiles. If you know, you know. But as you guys see here, these tickets are right around a 10 range in the green. That means they're a great bang for your buck. Whereas if you go for other tickets in the SeatGeek gap more in the 1 through 5 range and in the red, then they're not a good bang for your buck. You're probably spending more than you otherwise should, and you're better off seeking tickets elsewhere there in the SeatGeek gap. So whether it's for Mets tickets, Knicks ECF tickets, as we have game 4 tonight there in Indy, and my Knicks fans are trying to get a quick flight out there if you haven't already, or if you guys are in the comedy space, comedy show space, you name it on the ticketing front, SeatGeek has you covered, everybody. So again, guys, if you haven't already, make sure to check out our promo code WARDY10 down below the description of this, and it's hyperlinked. So if you guys already have SeatGeek's app downloaded, it'll automatically add 10% off your next ticket purchase. Just utilize our promo code WARDY10, and shout out once more to our friends at SeatGeek for being an amazing sponsor here on the platform. But guys, let's get right into this, and let's actually start today by beginning this discussion on the front of some of the guys that we're kind of waiting to find out when are they going to be with this Mets team. And let's start with a guy that we have talked about plenty on this platform, and we'll continue to do so because we're awfully curious to see what his 2025 is going to hold, and that obviously has everything to do, yes, with Mr. Mauricio. Roddy had himself a very productive day at the plate there that we saw just over the past 24 hours, going back there that we saw back on May 26th, May 25th range in that area from the last game that he actually played, because as we know, there are really no minor league games that actually happen on a Monday night unless they're makeup games. So for Syracuse, they didn't have anything going this past night, but the night prior they did, and Mauricio was yet again, as a surprise absolutely nobody, absolutely productive. Now, I will just fair warn, the highlights that you guys see from Mauricio and what Brandon Sproat I'll be showing today are not the exact highlights from their latest outing, only because there's only so many clips that I can actually utilize that I found out there on the web. So what you're seeing is a cultivation of what Mauricio has done on the hitting front so far this year in Syracuse over multiple games. It doesn't change the fact that he in his latest outing now went 2 for 4 with an RBI, a .556 average, and a well over 1,000 OPS in his first 5 or so games there in Syracuse. But he has been absolutely fantastic, tearing the cover off the ball and even batting from the right side of the plate, which is encouraging to a degree as well. So Mauricio is certainly providing the oomph on the offensive end that you're you're looking for. This is also the same Ronnie Mauricio that we have seen produce as well, both not just in the DH spot, but also when called upon. We have seen Ronnie do his thing when asked at third base, at shortstop, and at second base. And Mauricio played all innings there that we saw in this game at second base in particular, and he was proficient in doing so. So you can't just sit here and say to yourself that, oh, Ronnie Mauricio is nothing more than just a lone DH option for this Mets team, because that is the farthest thing from the truth. Ronnie Mauricio is absolutely a fantastic offensive option for this Mets team, and I firmly do believe that in the case of Ronnie and this Mets team, it's a matter of when, not if, he's going to find himself here with this Mets team. But now what begs the question that we're all kind of wondering and trying to ponder is, when is Ronnie Mauricio going to get the call, and ultimately, who is he going to get the call up for? Because we do know that Jared Young has, in fact, been there with the Mets the past 3+ games that we've seen there, batting at DH. And what has Jared Young done? Absolutely nothing on the offensive end. And because Jared Young has done nothing on the offensive end, this has caused a lot of Mets fans, including myself, to speculate, was Jared Young only up for a short stint option really to kind of pave the way for Ronnie Mauricio? Because the Mets were not able to call up Ronnie Mauricio any earlier than May 27th. And I'm not sitting here and expecting Ronnie to necessarily get the call today, nor will I be shocked if Ronnie is not called up for the next number of weeks still, if the Mets want to make sure he gets more consistent reps there in the minor leagues. But what these numbers in early production does tell us is that Ronnie Mauricio is not only off to a tremendous start for his season there for AAA Syracuse, but as a guy who did have that cup of coffee back in the 2023 sample size with the Mets, we know his bat can play up at the major league level. We do understand there's plenty of swing and miss that goes involved with Ronnie, more than likely too. And we also understand that there's a lot of question marks as to what exactly you're getting defensively from a player like him. But the one commonality and the one truth here is, everybody, is that Ronnie Mauricio absolutely is going to get a look from the Mets at some point in this season. Now we just have to figure out what will that be, and does it make sense for Jared Young to necessarily be the corresponding move? And I have to say, outside the Mets just wanting Ronnie Mauricio to get more consistent reps in the minor leagues for the defensive front than anything else, I firmly expect Ronnie Mauricio to be up with his team relatively soon. I don't have an exact date for you, but it's hard to envision a guy like Jared Young getting more consistent DH reps if he's going to be as productive or lack thereof as he's been his first 3 games here at the major league level this season. This is not as much a slight on Jared Young as it is, okay, why are we giving at bats to a player that doesn't necessarily need to be having them at the major league level when we can allocate those at bats for other players currently on the roster, on the team itself, including, Luis Angel Acuna has been such a gem at times when he's right. Why not have Acuna get a start and then put Vientos back at DH, right? So the Mets are toying what they think is best for the layout of their lineup, but Ronnie Mauricio can come in and give you plenty reps at DH. He can give you some reps at second base and or third base. Now, what you get defensively has yet to be seen, because we know that he's had such small sample sizes at the major league level. But I guess the point I'm trying to make here, everybody, is that Ronnie Mauricio, if you haven't kept him on your radar, you better start doing it now, because he has been looking fantastic every game to begin his stint with Syracuse this year. And as I said earlier, and I'll say once more, it's not a matter of if, but when he gets called up by the Mets this season. You guys can let me know in the comments down below, what is your speculative date as to when you think Ronnie Mauricio will actually be up with this Mets team this season? And could you see a guy like Jared Young being the corresponding move? Should it be in the immediate future, or someone else if it's going to be later on this year? You guys let me know. And again, thank you so much for doing exactly that, guys. Well, now let's go on from talking about a man at Ronnie Mauricio to now let's talk about a prospect here that certainly has played some very good baseball when called upon, and that is Mr. Brandon Sproat. But I would like to preface that what Brandon Sproat has done has been far more impressive as of late than it was for, I think, the vast majority of the season. I'm not the lone person to feel that way, everybody. When we talk about Brandon Sproat in particular, let's get into what has worked and what has not worked for him so far this season. Because as you guys see here, and these are highlights from Brandon Sproat's one of his sharper starts that he had earlier this year there in the Lehigh Valley against the Iron Pigs. So just fair warning, everybody, that's exactly why you're not seeing the exact highlights he had from the past day or so. That's just because sadly I wasn't able to find them and clip them for you guys here for this video. But Brandon Sproat, you know what the stuff is there. You got the sinker that's still sitting 95 to 97 plus there, and he does have a ground ball rate with said pitch right around 58% this season, which is encouraging to see. But what has been one of the bigger gripes with Brandon Sproat this year as one of the Mets' top pitching prospects, it most certainly has been having to do with the consistency and the velocity and his command. To see him have no walks across 5 innings is very encouraging on just 80 pitches for Brandon Sproat, going just 2 earned runs, 7 hits allowed, 4 strikeouts, what was one of his sharper starts on the season. But Brendan Sproat, who dominated all the minor leagues last year up until he got called up to AAA, he's been pretty much sitting right around a 7 ERA at the Syracuse level since being called up there last year, which is far from ideal. So let's get into, okay, what was encouraging about Brandon Sproat's latest outing here? It was certainly the command and also how the sinker played up. Now, the velo last year is what really put Brandon Sproat on the map, however, as a guy who was punching 98 to 100 plus on the gun. We have not seen that velocity nearly as consistently this year versus what we saw him high rise in the minor leagues beginning of the year. Let's not forget, this is the same Brandon Sproat that began the 2024 MILB season in single A, if I'm not mistaken. So he worked his way all the way up from single A to triple A last year, which was fantastic, but doesn't change the fact that he is still a lot to work to do on the front of finding the command, finding the control, and just more than anything, finding that consistency at the AAA level. And I remember David Stearns' interview that he held there with the media in spring training. One asked about when could we see Brandon Sproat potentially get an extended look there at the major league level, and he pretty much said that he just needs to find his footing and consistency at the AAA level to warrant not only that discussion, but to warrant said call-up. So Brandon Sproat that we see in this latest outing, even after this, still has a just over 6 ERA so far for AAA Syracuse this season alone. So we definitely need to see more continued outings. And his teammate right now, Noah McLean, is a guy that he should look at when looking at the consistency front. Because Noah McLean, in 2 out of his 3 starts at the AAA level, has had more impressive stints already than you could argue that Brandon Sproat has pretty much ever done at the AAA level, with the exception of maybe 1 start so far going back to last season. McLean looks like he is the most polished and established pitching prospect the Mets currently have. Brandon Sproat, many believe, has the best pure stuff of all, but he just has a lot more fine-tuning to do. And Jonathan, many believe, has the upside to be as good as any in this Mets farm on the pitching front. So the Mets do have a nice little 3-headed monster there at their top pitching prospects. And then you think of the other guys there, especially Zach Thornton, who looks like an absolutely fantastic dominant southpaw option right now, who's killing it in the minor leagues separately, who had a very strong start the other day. He had a perfect game going across 6.1 innings or so. He was just absolutely tremendous, everybody. So that is what we're getting here, Mr. Brandon Sproat. And I definitely want to hear from you guys. When do you expect a Brandon Sproat call-up to potentially happen this season, if it's going to happen this season? Because there's no indication to suggest that Brandon's going to be up at the major league level probably anything sooner than the second half of the year. And that's wishful thinking, assuming that he can actually get more consistency down there with his pitching at the AAA level. And I really do hope that Sproat can thrive, because I not only hope that Sproat can thrive, but I would love to see Sproat thrive in this rotation, especially next season, along with his fellow teammate that he had there during their time at Florida with the Gators, that being in Christian Scott, who's working himself back from the reconstructive Tommy John surgery, and what Scott should actually be healthy and ready before the season's end. Similar to Drew Smith on the reliever front, as Drew is hopeful that he could return to this Mets team before the end of the year. The bigger question is, do the Mets even need a guy like Drew Smith by that point in the season? But we'll worry about that when we get there, everybody. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below on not only the Ronnie Mauricio front as to when you expect him to get the call, but also Brandon Sproat, and what is your optimism or pessimism level on that front for one of, if not the true Mets top pitching prospects so far here in the 2025 season. But as we get back in this, everybody, now you see the highlights beside me. You see a guy in Jose Siri there. We haven't had a lot of Jose Siri highlights to flex so far this year, but we do have a couple. And out of the few that I have, I figured I'd show you guys and remind you of the impact that Jose Siri has on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball. Because while it is true that Tyrone Taylor is playing tremendous center field right now, and you should not take that away from him in the slightest, Jose Siri is a Swiss Army knife. And in similarity to Luis Angel Acuna, the guy can just make things happen, even if the bat-to-ball skills aren't going to be as proficient as what you're otherwise hoping as a fan. But let's now hear what guys and Carlos Mendoza has to say on the front of not only Jose Siri, but also Jesse Winker, and yes, Sean Manaea. Let's listen up, everybody. Oh, hold on one second, folks. Let's see if the audio is coming through. No audio coming through, because why would it? Unbelievable. Of course, I have to do this while I'm doing the live recording. Hate to see it. Just give me 1 second, everybody. Thank you so much for your patience. Now we should be good. Okay. Now let's hear what Mendy has to say. Take 2. Try this again.
Jesse Winker still shut down?
Yes, he's still, he's just doing a little bit of running and all that, but he's still ways away before he start grabbing a bat.
And Jesse Winker still shut down? Manaea Siri running out there. Just what have you seen from him, and what are his next steps?
Yeah, so continues his running progression. That's the biggest thing, you know. Right now, he's still just a straight line, nothing side to side or anything like that. I was just told he's one of the guys that are going to be facing. So Sean Manaea has got a live VP on Thursday, and Jose is going to be one of the hitters. So that's, you know, he took BP on the field yesterday, but the fact that now he's going to start facing some live pitching, that's good.
Oh, we saw.
All right, guys, so that was some encouraging news, to say the least, on the front of Jose Siri. And as you guys see here, this was Jesse Winker this past day there on the field, just getting those little leg kicks in, getting himself warmed up a little bit. But as we know, Jesse still has his way to go. And he also, I noticed, has a little bit of a brace going on his right hand wrist area as well. That's separate from the oblique injury. I can't imagine that's anything too serious, but that is another thing that Jesse Winker is working himself through. So unfortunately, Jesse is not returning the Mets in the immediate future. But if there's any good thing about that, as crazy as that sounds to say, as someone who loves Jesse Winker, it's the fact that the longer Jesse Winker's not with this Mets team, the longer it extends the leash of Brett Baty as well. And I think if there's one positive to come out of, obviously, Jesse Winker going down with injury, it's that it really has now allowed Brett Baty to start to blossom more at the major league level. Big question with Baty, and this goes without saying because it's the same story every year, is can he get that consistency down? Will he be able to get in a groove to find himself actually being a true mainstay at the major league level? Because a guy who's been a more of a mainstay at the major league level the past couple years, even though he's been very boomer bust in his production, is Mr. Jose Siri. As you guys see Jose right there, taking his BP hacks in from this past day or so. Now, I would also like to preface that Jose Siri was not only getting BP hacks in, but he also, we saw there, was out in the field. But as Carlos Mendoza alluded to, he's not moving laterally too much yet, but he is taking more hacks, and he is progressing at much faster rate than what Carlos Mendoza and David Stearns were initially expecting when asked in a previous interview on Siri, I want to say a week and a half ago or so. So very encouraging signs for Jose Siri, obviously, and we know how much of a lightning bolt, as he loves to rock those dangle earrings and necklace, will tell you that he's exactly that there on the base pass and with some of the best defense you'll ever find. No slight on at all on Tyrone Taylor, because he's been tremendous in the outfield, but Jose Siri is even better. As crazy as it is to say, Jose Siri's defensive range, his speed, and his arm is quite literally one of the best, not just in the National League, but in Major League Baseball. And all the savant numbers will tell you exactly that as well. He's an absolute stud when he's right defensively. So Jose Siri, I'm looking forward to seeing inch his way back, but most notably here, I think the discussion has more to do not just with Jose Siri as a guy that we could see back with this Mets team, certainly in the month of June. I think that goes without saying. If he's taking live BP against Sean Manaea, then he will be back with this Mets team at some point over the next month. Just a couple weeks away at minimum, I'd imagine. Then in the case there of Sean Manaea, that's the big news, everybody, because we did see Frankie Montas finally have himself there a rehab outing in Brooklyn in which he won 1.1 or 1.2 innings, a couple runs. But again, first outing of the year there since his first bullpen that he threw in spring training when he went down with injury. Sean Manaea had the oblique injury, then he thought he was healthy, and then he went back down because he set back. Manaea's finally facing live batters, and that's huge because then the next step after facing live batters will pretty much begin a rehab stint. So we'll hopefully see how things go this Thursday. I'd imagine that they'll likely go well for Sean Manaea, the Simone Southpaw. But let's also not forget how impactful Sean Manaea is when he's with this Mets team. He was, without question, you could rightfully argue, our best starter down the stretch last year in the second half. Once he made that arm slot change on that angle, more Chris Sale-esque, especially on the sweeper there, and he throws a high sinker the way that he does so brilliantly. It's so deceptive, not only to lefty-lefty batters, but also some of the righty-lefty matchups can really be deceiving. So I love Sean Manaea. I'm very happy to hear that he's working his way back to this Mets team, and we should hopefully get Sean Manaea again back sometime here in the month of June as well. That's the expectation with Frankie Montas, and knowing that we're just a couple days away from that first series in June in LA against the Dodgers, I do believe that we'll get them back at some point in the month. It's just a matter of exactly when the date is going to be. But for a Mets rotation and bullpen that's carried them for the best collective pitching staff in Major League Baseball, they're now getting reinforcements in the next couple weeks, and oh man, are they important ones. Not just are you getting a huge innings eater in Frankie Montas, you're getting an ace caliber starter when healthy and at his absolute best in Sean Manaea, pairing that with Kodai Senga, David Pearson, Clay Holmes, Griffin Canning, everyone else in this rotation. Tyler McGill to a degree as well. That's great to hear. And Jose Siri, again, you can never have enough speed demons. What has been one thing that Luis Angel Acuna has done so brilliantly so far this season? It's about making a difference regardless on what his production or lack thereof is on the offensive output. As soon as Acuna comes in as a pinch running situation, just like he did this past day, you know he's going to make a difference. And if it isn't for Acuna being the pinch runner for Francisco Alvarez in the bottom of the 8th inning a day ago there in the walk-off against the White Sox, the Mets likely don't even win that game, especially in that walk-off fashion. Acuna eventually comes in to score that game-tying run, and that was massive. And then we saw, obviously, Francisco Lindor walk it off by pulling that baseball to right there in the 9th inning. So very encouraging things there on the front of Speed Demons, because you got Luis Angel Acuna, you got there Jose Siri, and these guys collectively can not only steal bags for days, but they can make a huge impact defensively alone, where yes, you might be a little underwhelmed as to what you're getting offensively. Jose Siri might strike out more than anyone else in Major League Baseball, but by God, when he makes contact with a baseball, he's going to hit it harder than a lot of other guys in the National League. He's so bizarre of a player to look at when you look at the splits, because they are unbelievably drastic if you look at the numbers through Baseball Savant. But in a nutshell, Jose Siri is a Swiss Army knife, just like Luis Angel Acuna, and I look forward to seeing him back, because he absolutely is a guy that should be on this roster over what was a Jose Ascar or what currently is a Jared Young. Now, bearing in mind with Jared Young, does that at all play up to when the Mets kind of figure out what they want to do with Ronnie Mauricio? We'll soon find out on that front. But all I'm telling you guys is that I have Jose Siri, Frankie Montas, and Sean Manaea all expected to return within the next month. That's a big deal, and we should be grateful for that. So, guys, let me know all your thoughts on the Jose Siri front, Sean Manaea front, and everyone else there in the comments down below. Who are you most looking forward to seeing return to this Mets team between Sean Manaea, Frankie Montas, Jose Siri, and why? Let me hear it again. And thank you guys so much for doing exactly that. Now, before we get out of here, we have two quick things that I want to relay. And one of the following is what is happening there with guys in Luis Torrens and Francisco Alvarez, because I've been asked constantly from my Mets followers here in the live chat and the comments down below from my replay viewers, and that is, Wardy, the Mets got to do something about Francisco Alvarez. They got to send him down. Torrens got to play every day. But guys, have we not learned? I feel like we haven't learned again. I feel like we're in the same situation that we were in not too long ago. And in case you guys don't know exactly what I mean by that, what I mean by that is, we have this short-term reaction, which is if a player isn't performing well and another guy is clearly thriving, you want the other guy to get consistent playing time. And while I completely understand where you're coming from, when it comes to catching tandems, they're very important. Catching tandems are some of the most important things in Major League Baseball, not only for their game calling, for the respective pitching staff, but also to keep guys fresh and also to keep them sharp. You can make the rightful argument that by having Luis Torrens play every single day, that's likely going to be the demise of his consistent offensive production. Not to say that is for certain going to be a thing, but there's absolutely a reality where that is the case, and there is reasons as to why exactly that is. And let's start here with Luis Torrens, because Torrens, again, has been fantastic this season. He has a 275 average, a 776 OPS, and over his past 7 games, he's batting just under 400 with, I'm looking at right now, right around a 900 OPS. So he's looked great. Over his past 15 games, he's still batting 317 there with, again, right around an 850 or so OPS. So he's looked fantastic for the vast majority of the season in Luis Torrens. But why are the Mets platooning him and Francisco Alvarez? Well, I just said it, but I'll say it again. You got to give them both playing time. And Alvarez is only 23 years of age. I don't know why we're writing off a guy in which there's so many catchers at the major league level that don't even make their debut until they're right around north of 25. I mean, just for some context, Adley Rutschman, who was the heralded catching prospect by the Orioles, did not make his MLB debut there until his later 20s. And as a matter of fact, I'm actually going to check right now how old was Adley Rutschman's MLB debut, because I know for certain he was 23 to 25 in that range. Adley Rutschman, let's see this, Rutschman MLB debut age. And we're going to do this live in real time because why not? Let's just see everybody. Okay, Adley. What year was Adley Rutschman a rookie? He was a rookie in 2022. I understand that. Let's see here. Let's go to his Fangraphs numbers, actually, because the Fangraphs is going to have it. Because what's awesome about Fangraphs is that when you go on the Fangraphs website, for those that are interested, you head over to Fangraphs, and when you look up a player, in the case right now, I'm looking up Adley Rutschman right now, and they tell you not only season by season, but the age next to the season. And in Adley Rutschman's rookie effing season, he was older than Francisco Alvarez. So miss me with this nonsense that we continue to get from casual Mets fans saying that Francisco Alvarez is a bust. Alvarez has been in Major League Baseball pretty much since the age of 20 or so, whereas Adley Rutschman, the top catching prospect deemed by many across Major League Baseball, didn't even make his debut until the age of 24, meaning that Alvarez wouldn't have even been in the major leagues yet in comparison. And the reason why I'm doing that comp is because a lot of people, including myself to a degree, have paired Adley with Alvarez, with young, high upside catchers and their potential at the major league level. Now, Alvarez obviously has been underwhelming with the bat, and there's no denying that. When you look at Alvarez's past 7 games, he's batting $136 with an OPS that's no better than 400 or so. You look at the past 15 games, he's batting $217 with an OPS that's no better than what I'm looking at right now, around 550. He has a 627 OPS on the year, 236 average, and 321 on base. Now, Alvarez's offensive approach has been both Jekyll and Hyde in my personal belief, in the sense of if I'm enjoying it or not as a fan. Because on one hand, I love the fact that Alvarez is now spreading for all fields. I love the fact that Alvarez is going center and opposite field, and he's really priding that in his BP sessions that we're noticing. The problem, however, is that by focusing more on spreading for all fields, Alvarez has lost the power again. And it feels like yesterday, Alvarez was giving us all chills down our spine as a 21-year-old hitting over 20 tanks a couple years ago in the 2023 season, which was an absolute shit show for this Mets team, but not for Francisco Alvarez by any stretch, who was very boomer bust. But it's okay if he was boomer bust, because even if he's batting right around the Mendoza line, if you're giving us over 20 home runs a year at the catching position, we're grateful for that. The problem now is we're getting a very underwhelming Francisco Alvarez. And Alvarez worked all offseason long in the hitting lab in Atlanta, where JDM recommended. JD Martinez, who was with the Mets last year, recommended that Alvarez goes to a hitting lab that he worked with plenty in the past in Atlanta to get his swing right. And on paper, I do like, especially with the eye test, Alvarez's swing. It's far more short, compact, and doesn't have nearly as much loose ends as he usually did with his follow through in years past. But the problem that we're seeing again is that the confidence is just not there at all in the power. He looks like a guy that doesn't know what he's trying to do when he's up at the plate. He's just hoping to make something happen. And I know that isn't too far off from the average MLB hitter, but Alvarez has the expectation to not only be an average MLB hitter, but to potentially be above league average at some point. And maybe that'll never happen, maybe that will, but I just hate the notion that people are writing him off so fast. While yes, I understand he's been underwhelming, let's not forget the defensive impact that Alvarez has, nor should we forget just how much upside a guy has. And I really think this goes more in hand with another season where Alvarez, again, has a hand-related injury with the hamate bone. That's no joke. And for that to happen on his catching hand twice in as many years there is not good either. So in the case of Alvarez, he needs to not only stay healthy, but that confidence needs to be built back up. He needs to take advantage for when the Mets offense is really riding high and at their best this year and thriving along with them versus being a liability at times and inducing a double play ground ball consistently, among other things. But for the fans in the back that are saying you got to ride the high end, I don't disagree with you, but I'm telling you, we shouldn't expect things to be much more drastic than Torrens getting 2 out of 3 games start, or then you're going to see Alvarez get 2 out of 3 games. Or when it's a 4-game set in LA, they're likely going to split it 2-2 unless one is completely outplaying the other so pronounced that you can't justify taking them out of the line. That is the reality that we find ourselves in. So while I understand the fans are disgruntled or frustrated to a degree, just remember the context of what I told you. A guy like Adley Rutschman didn't even make his debut until almost a year after from now for Francisco Alvarez, when he's already been in the MLB for multiple years on end. I think we lose track of the Alvarez stuff because of how much he burst on the scene a couple years ago. But what is one thing that Francisco Alvarez did so brilliantly in 2023 versus what he's had to deal with the past couple years? And that was by staying healthy. Alvarez did not have the same extent of hand injuries each of the past 2 seasons that he had in that true breakout 2023 season with the Mets. That is important context, because that context alone should tell you that hopefully in a healthy start to a season next year as well, we should get the best out of Francisco Alvarez. And I hope it begins the season, obviously, but I'm telling you that, again, the sky is still the limit with a player like him. It just comes down to the consistency and the confidence, because we know that he's had at-bats that look great and others that leave you head scratching as to, is he even worthy of being at the major league level? I completely understand those things, but I do firmly believe that Torrens will come down to earth a decent amount with the increased playing time. He's taking advantage of the sample sizes that he has. Let's not hurt this, because if it ain't broke, why fix it? I think the Mets have something perfectly fine going on right now with their tandem. I don't expect them to give Torrens a full series, nor do I expect Alvarez to get a full series. They'll ride the hot hand slightly, but remember the context again on Francisco Alvarez, everybody. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. But all half jokes aside, everybody, before we get out of here, let me leave you with this. What happened in the farm the last time that the minor league games were transpiring over the past 24 to 48 hours? And let's start there in Syracuse, because the Syracuse Mets did, in fact, lose their latest game here by a final score of 9-5 back a couple days ago. And on the offensive end, we saw Mauricio be productive. Brandon Sproat had a strong game. Justin Hangman won 2.2 innings of 1 earned run ball. Dano Nunez got 1 out, and that was fine. Felipe De La Cruz, a southpaw option, who I like a lot for the Mets to consider out of their bullpen this year. He went 1 shutty in this outing with a pair of strikeouts. Ty Adcock gave up 6 runs and 4 earned runs. He's now up to over 3 ERA. Rico Garcia just went out there to end the ball game. That was fine, and that's all she wrote there on the pitching end. And offensively, we saw guys like Hayden Sanger with a couple RBIs, De Los Santos at third base with a couple RBIs, and that's pretty much all she wrote. Drew Gilbert was 0-for, and he's now down to a 220 average and 665 OPS, batting leadoff and center field. But let's get on to the Rumble Ponies, as we have how many games for the Rumble Ponies? We have 2 games for the Rumble Ponies to recap here. And the first is a 2-1 victory over the Flying Squirrels. And the notables were LaRusso hitting his 10th double of the year there at the hot corner. He's been solid this year. Jet Williams went 0-for, still batting 275 with an 848 OPS. Nick Morabito won 1-for-2. Love Nick Morabito, 265 average, 745 OPS. He's picked it up as of late, which is great to see. Alex Ramirez with an RBI. Lugo with an RBI as well. DH Lugo's batting 287 with a 709 OPS. Ramirez is just batting over the Mendoza line. Pitching-wise, Jack Weniger, another strong start for the right-hander. 5 innings of 3 hit, 1 earned run ball, 0 walks, and 5 strikeouts, now down to a 2.70 ERA. Orlana, who's looked fantastic, a scroll setting here with a walk and a hit, a 1.47 ERA. And we saw Ross have himself a scroll setting too, and he was recently called up there from Brooklyn to the Rumble Ponies. And their other Rumble Pony game, because they had a doubleheader, they won 4-2 in this matchup over the Flying Squirrels. And the notables is that Jet the Met Williams had himself a big day, 2-for-3 that we saw this time at shortstop, 284 average, 858 OPS. We saw Smith in center field go 2-for-3 with a run scored. We saw Alex Ramirez with 3 RBIs and a pair of hits. Love to see that from Ramirez. Kevin Parada had an RBI, but Buddy's batting a buck 157, not ideal. Wyatt Young with his 276 average and 720 OPS, looking great towards the bottom of the order there. And what we saw on the pitching end was Shook going 3 scoreless innings, Ryan Lambert going 1 scoreless. Lambert, the flamethrowing right-hander the Mets drafted not long ago, 2.70 ERA, to Shook at a 2.20, and Guzman, who's looked fantastic all year long, with a 1.54 ERA there in a scoreless inning. Now let's get on now to our next game, which is going to be the Brooklyn Cyclones. And the Cyclones won 6-4 in their matchup against the Blue Claws. And the notables were that we saw Ewing at DH leading off 1-for-2 with a run scored and an RBI, 357 average and a 933 OPS. Carson Bench, another big game for Carson, the Mets' first-round pick from a year ago, 2-for-2 with 2 runs scored and 2 walks, 321 average and just over 1,000 OPS. Not a matter of if, but when he gets called up there to the next step, which will be the Rumble Ponies. Jesus Baez is looking tremendous, guys. We're finally getting a Jesus Baez breakout, and this is really important because not only has Jesus Baez looked tremendous as of late, everybody, but we're seeing Jesus Baez also produce now at the minor league level when he was a shell of himself to begin the first month of the year. Baez and Zach Thornton, who pitched a fantastic game the other day, and Baez, who won 6-for-8 in a doubleheader the other day and has been tearing the cover off the ball since. Baez was named the South Atlantic League player of the week in that league, and Zach Thornton was named the Eastern League pitcher of the week. So shout out to them both. But Baez on the hot corner, 2-for-4 with 3 RBIs, a 283 average and an 807 OPS. Baez, just like Ryan Clifford, are 2 of the hardest hitters in all the Mets minor leagues. And it's fantastic to see him really thriving the way that he is now, because if he thrives like this, he'll be with the Rumble Ponies before the end of the season, and who knows what Jesus Baez's future is going to tell at the major league level. But I like him a lot, and I'm encouraged to see that production. Matt Allen won 1.2 scoreless innings, did allow a unearned run, but a earned run, he gave up none. Unearned, he gave up 1. Pair of walks and strikeouts, still has yet to allow a run there since being called up, moving up from low A to high A. And that's about it on the pitching end, everybody. So now let's get on to the final ones that we have here, as the Blue Claws won the other game of their doubleheader, 6-4 against the Cyclones. And the notables that I see in this one, everybody, are going to be Boston Barrow going 2-for-4 with his 2nd triple of the year and a home run. Talk about a day for Boston Barrow at shortstop. Love to see that. Jacob Reimer didn't have a hit, but he's batting .321 with over 1,000 OPS. Ewing had an RBI because, of course, he did. .352 average and .915 OPS. And on the pitching end in this matchup, we saw Joel Diaz not look so great in this one, allowed 5 earned runs. And Joel, who's off to a great start this year in the minor leagues that we saw there in low A, not having the same success thus far in high A. And speaking of low A, let's get on to the St. Lucie Mets, because the St. Lucie Mets against the Hammerheads in their latest matchup, everybody. Let's see how they fared. They won 8-0 comfortably in this matchup from what I'm seeing, everybody. And in their 8-0 victory, actually, I think I talked about this the other day. So let me see what happened the game after, because we already talked about that 8-0 victory. Let's talk about their 4-3 loss to the Hammerheads. And the notables were that we saw Watson give up 3 earned runs over 4.2 innings. And offensively, we saw Colin Houck go 1 for 4 with a run scored. Collins at DH go 3 for 3. And that's pretty much it. Everyone else had about a hit, including Simone Juan with an RBI. Roselli in the left field, same exact thing applies. But, underwhelming offensive numbers there in Port St. Lucie. So again, guys and gals, that is going to do it for our latest Big Mets update segment. I'd like to thank you all so much for watching. Please let us know all your key takeaways in the comments down below. And be on the lookout for likely more post-game coverage, barring changes later on today after the conclusion of Game 2 between the Mets and the White Sox there at Citi Field. Thank you guys again, as always, no matter what. Let's go Mets, baby. Peace out, folks.